Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. A little different today. I'm standing in front of a print here of Café, I think it's called Café Le Soir, which was painted by Van Gogh or Van Gogh or whatever his name is. Dutch painter in southern France. It's an image of language, takes you to exotic places, and you can mix different cultures, and that's what I love about it. But today I want to talk about long-term versus short-term activities or strategies in language learning. And I thought about it because I was reflecting on my Farsi experience, where I've really been kind of hitting Farsi hard since I came back from Morocco. Prior to that, I've been working on Arabic. Now I'm doing sort of 3 days a week of Farsi, 3 days a week of Arabic. But even with this limited exposure to Farsi, I am having conversations with my tutor, and I am speaking, and I'm able to express things. And I'll show you that later on in a couple of weeks or so. As a part of our 90-day challenge and the sort of daily clinic that we're going to do, people are saying, when will the daily clinic, what time of the day? We haven't decided yet. It's a little bit uncertain. We'll have to feel our way to that. And I will be letting you know here, once we get into the 90-day challenge, how all of this is going to work. So just stay tuned at this channel. But long-term versus short-term, which is also something to consider as we go into a 90-day challenge. What are we trying to achieve? So if I compare Farsi to Czech, despite having learned Russian and having a lot of the vocabulary and having all kinds of advantages, it was 8 months before I spoke to a tutor, and then I struggled mightily. All right. Whereas with Farsi, but I had a lot of words. Like right now in Czech, I have 50,000 words according to our statistics at Link. In Farsi, I have less than 1,400 words, I believe. I just checked. And yet I'm speaking in Farsi. So why? Well, one thing I've done in Farsi is that I have these mini stories, so I've listened to them 30, 40, 50 times. So I have quite a good grasp on a more limited amount of vocabulary. Part of the reason I do that is because Farsi is intrinsically more difficult than Czech, because Czech is written in the Latin alphabet, Farsi is written in the Arabic alphabet. It's more difficult to read, therefore, in Farsi. With Czech, I had more sort of accessible, sort of intermediate, although it was still difficult, but it was easier to get into authentic content, more difficult to do in Farsi. Plus, I'm motivated to speak to all the Farsi speakers in Vancouver, whereas there's no Czech speakers for me to talk to in Vancouver. So I had two different goals. I know that even though I can speak to my Farsi speaking tutor, it's a long way before I will be able to understand, news podcasts, radio programs, and that kind of thing. Because to do that in any language requires a lot of vocabulary. I do eventually want to get there. So the time that I'm spending on improving my short-term ability to speak is time that's taken away from building up enough vocabulary to be able to read newspaper articles on politics and so forth. In the case of Arabic, I'm starting to do more of, fighting my way through Al Jazeera, online newspaper articles. But I still go back to my repetitive listening of mini stories, which are tremendously powerful in terms of building up your ability to speak. So if I have a need to speak, now I don't really have a big need to speak in Arabic, and in particular in modern standard Arabic, so that my goal there is still somewhat more passive in terms of wanting to build up enough vocabulary so that I can follow things on the internet. Whereas in Farsi, my goal is much more short-term, just to be able to converse with people in Farsi. So I think it's important that we have a strategy, like what do we want to achieve? The ability to say a few things in the language in the short term, if that's all you want to achieve, then you put all your emphasis on that. If you want to also build up your ability to watch movies and follow stuff on the internet, then you have to force yourself into some of those sort of longer term activities, acquiring more vocabulary. I can't listen to these podcasts 20, 30 times. They're too long. I give myself some exposure to these podcasts after having worked through the text, but it's still very, very fuzzy for me, just as it was when I was learning Czech month after month after month. I was struggling to understand the material that I was listening to. And yet slowly you get better. I should also say that in my repetitive listening to even my Arabic and my Farsi mini stories, every time I listen, I focus on something else. I discover something else. I discover a phrase I knew, but I hadn't really focused on it, or a structure. And so that I still find it compelling in a way to spend some of my time working on this basic material to get a better grip on, a natural grip on some of the structures of the language, and combine that, in the case of Arabic, with pushing my vocabulary forward, whereas in Farsi I'm still more or less focused on, the most common verbs of the language, which appear in our 60 mini stories. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. I think all of us have to decide, based on our goals, whether we want to put more time into the sort of short-term objectives or invest in the long term, because eventually we will be able to speak. It's just that we won't be able to say very much up front if we're focusing on building up our vocabulary for the long term. So there you have it. And, next Friday we start the 90-day challenge. So once again, people can study any language they want. I will be holding regular clinics where I will be showing you what I am doing. My 90-day challenge is, for the first time, 2 languages, Arabic and Farsi. But most people will be doing 1 language. And I'll be talking about what I'm doing. And we will decide on a time of day for those of you, this is for my clinics, those of you who want to join me. I'm not sure how this is going to work. We will find out as we get into it. So thank you for listening. And today's Monday. Thursday will be my last regular video until we get into our 90-day challenge starting next Friday. Oh, and I almost forgot. I'm going to Fukuoka in the fall for the Polyglot Conference there, Fukuoka, Japan. And I was contacted by a lady who works for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the CBC, which has a program called The Nature of Things with David Suzuki. And they're doing a program on polyglots. And she would like to hear from any polyglots, anyone who speaks 2 or more languages, who is prepared to sort of tackle learning Japanese. That is to say, anyone who is going to Fukuoka, I think that's what she wants, or otherwise interested in working on Japanese because she wants to somehow interview these people or keep track of or understand better how these polyglots would go about learning Japanese in a lead up to the Fukuoka Polyglot Conference. So if you are at all interested in contacting Eileen, is her name, I will leave her email address in the description box here. Thank you. Bye.